Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Think Future. My name is Calabucas, and once again, we're coming at you live from deep in the heart of Silicon Valley, California. We're talking innovation startups, the future, not necessarily those, and not necessarily in that order. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and the bell so you can get notified when a new show pops up 6 times a week without fail. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast service, please subscribe, and if you drop us a review on Apple Podcast, that would be greatly appreciated. Look at that. I said all of that without adding a we, because there is no we. It is just me, myself, and I. So before I was talking about solvable problems, and I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing today have almost been created by ourselves so that we can solve them for ourselves, because they're easy to create and they're easy to solve. So now it's time to think about those intractable problems, or seemingly intractable problems, that we're having such a tough time with. And I think we need to start with definitions, because if you don't define something properly, how can you possibly determine what it actually is, right? For example, if you were going after a goal, it's like, my goal is to make this amount of money in these amount of years. How are you going to get to that goal? You need to define that goal. Even those people who do the manifestation stuff, they go, you have to be really, really specific about the goal you want to manifest. So that's what we need to do. We need to look at the goals that we're trying to reach, and we need to be very, very concrete about getting to that goal. What exactly are we trying to do? Because I think we're in this current malaise where we haven't fully defined the problem that we're trying to solve, right? For example, let's say we were trying to solve world hunger. You can say we're trying to solve world hunger, but what is the definition of world hunger? Is the definition of world hunger that everyone in the world has a certain subsistence level of food, that no one goes hungry? Okay, that's a good start, but it's still not detailed enough, right? What kind of food are we delivering? What level of nutrition are we going to provide? If we're going to say we're going to end world hunger, you need to go deeper into that concept and say, that's not good enough. We need to figure out what we mean by ending world hunger. Does it mean that the poorest person in the world will get this much rice, this much bread, this much that? They'll get this much protein, they'll get this much. You see what I'm saying? We have not yet fully defined what we mean by solving world hunger. Have we actually sat down and said, listen, we can say the solution to world hunger has been completed when each and every human being in the world gets this minimum amount of food? No, we can't say that, because no one has actually defined what this minimum amount of food is. That's why we have so many problems with these issues, because we have not deeply defined exactly what we mean by that, right? Because hunger in one country is very different from hunger in a different country. If we defined it down to the actual thing that we're trying to provide, if we said we need to provide this many pounds of rice, or this many pounds of this, or this many pounds of that, or this much water, or this much clean water, etc., 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 then we could say, let's figure out a way to provide that thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why these problems still seem so intractable, because we have not defined them to the point where we've been able to act upon them, right? You can say, oh, I want to try and solve world hunger, and then you go to a specific country and you help a specific set of people, right? And you give them enough food to survive so that they flourish. But is that the same amount of food here and here and here and here? There's no solution, because the problem has not been fully defined. And it's the same with many of these problems that we have that plague humanity. I mean, something like solving the cure for cancer or for heart disease, that's different. Although there are ways of us being able to figure out the specific things that lead to those things. Of course, We are still trying to figure those things out. I'm not saying we should stop. I'm just saying that it's more defined. That problem is more defined, right? But if we look at something like equality, right? Income inequality, it's a big problem, right? I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are saying income inequality is a big problem. So if income inequality is a big problem, how do you solve it? And then you say, well, you just tax the rich and give it to the poor. But how much do you tax the rich? Is it a sustainable thing to tax the rich? Is basic, what is it called? Universal basic income. Is UBI a thing? Is it an actual thing that you can say, if we bring in UBI, we will solve these problems? I had this conversation with Nick on one of my interview shows. Is universal basic income the problem? No, it's probably just hitting a specific symptom, right? So we have to look at these things and we have to say to ourselves, if we want to tackle these really big problems that are plaguing humanity, these huge, huge problems, then we need to define them down to the very last thing, into concrete terms. And once we start defining these problems into concrete terms, then we can start addressing them properly. But this is what I think. The problem is in the definition. Because once we as human beings can define problems down to concrete terms, like for example the world hunger problem, the world hunger problem, if we could define it down to 2 pounds of rice, blah 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 blah, down to that level of exactitude, I'm sure we could figure out a way of solving that problem. So the problem is in the definition. And if you think about it, unless you define the problem down to that level, you'll never be able to solve it. So you have to think to yourself, those people who are working towards solving these big problems, when they don't define them down to that level, you wonder how much progress they really want to make against those problems. If you ask me, I want to make progress against those problems. I want to get to the post-scarcity society. I want to solve all these supposedly untenable issues that plague humanity. But we can't until we define them right down to concrete actions. That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.